struggling today. I like to blame it on the fact that my husband started the night shift, but I was actually used that as an excuse to be trying to get through the advanced copy you were kind enough to let me start looking over of your new book, Lies My Government Told Me. And it's amazing, for as much as we've talked and as many conversations as we've had, there's still so much I'm learning about you. So good job. I did not get through all 46 chapters, but I did at least make the start. So gosh, how do you have time, first of all, to have worked in writing this book?
Well, I don't have enough time, and we've slipped 2 deadlines already. I eventually expect Tony Lyons to come to me with a big stick and hit me over the head, but he's going to have to fight off Jill, who's going to be first in line if I don't finish editing it. The answer is we've been working on it for a long time now, ever since I helped edit Bobby Kennedy's book. And this was the genesis of our diving into Substack in the way that we have, the little brainstorm, because these days book publishing doesn't make any money. You don't get much of it in advance unless you're a very important person. And in the publishing world, I am not. So Jill and I were scratching our heads. Well, how are we going to get this book written and still stay afloat and pay our bills? And so the brainstorm was that we would go ahead and serialize the chapters. We would use Substack to build the book on a daily basis. And that's what we've done. We've put out an article or a Substack publication pretty much every day since early December. And many of these were specifically designed to go into the book. And then, of course, the problem is that they get outdated. They have to be edited and updated. The style that you use for Substack and my tendency to be a little snarky doesn't fit so well in a book format and blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of how it's come to pass. And then, as you saw in the first third of the book, many of these are first person stories from people that have been on the front lines of COVID. And my hope was that by allowing them to speak their truth, people can see and understand what the physicians and others have been subjected to, the people that have been censored. It's hard to understand what it's like to be at the forefront as this happens, unless you've experienced. This is a bizarre Alice in Wonderland world where, and you have, of course, walked alongside me through this since very early on with your podcasts and broadcasts, and I'm grateful for that. And you were one of the ones early on that warned me about how wicked the media can be because you've experienced it yourself.
Yeah, and I'm honored to have walked this road with you, and I think hopefully we've learned a little bit from each other, along the way. And I appreciate you're cautious. I appreciate that about you, that you're cautious, but you have gotten more and more open to the reality of just the evil that we're dealing with and the control that we're dealing with. One thing that I didn't really know is that what really struck this all off, and you tell the story in your introduction, is actually your wife writing a book in a crazy amount of time. Basically, she put out this book, the first book on COVID, within like a month? It was insane. Can you kind of give people a sneak peek of what that was like and going through that?
Yeah, so the story, and we've talked about it before, Jill and I and me in podcasts, but you're right, a lot of people don't know it. I got this call from Wuhan on January 4th, and Jill and I both just got to work. We've been through outbreaks before, and I focused on getting my team wound up and focused on repurposed drug discovery. And she decided, because she was a big fan of Amazon self-publishing, to go ahead and self-publish a book that was really designed for our neighbors, for average people, to try to help them prepare and protect themselves from this novel coronavirus. It didn't even have a name back then. And she just worked her can off. I wrote a couple chapters and I edited things. She's a PhD, so this was all properly cited and referenced, etc. And she just put her heart and soul into it. And the idea was that because of the self-publishing model, we would be able to update it fairly frequently, every couple of weeks, as more data came in. And people that had the Kindle version would just be automatically able to upload the revised version that had the updates. That was the idea. And that worked for about a month. And then we submitted one of the updates, and suddenly Amazon blocked it. And we were like, what's going on? Kept pestering them. And then finally it came out that they were going to pull the book. And the excuse for pulling the book was it violated community standards. And I've had people look at this again and again, and nobody can figure out, it's a head scratcher. What community standards did we violate? I mean, it was an MD and a PhD writing a book for the average person that said things like, well, you can get those little alcohol wipes and use it in the airplanes when you get in. And we actually advocated for masks. We said you can use a mask and that might help you in N95. We talked about planning your own victory garden because of all the disruption that's going to happen with the food chain. It's very common sense things, and we just tried to write it for our neighbors. We live in a rural area, and our neighbors are agriculture folks. You know, they're just average people going to the feed store and the grocery store and trying to take care of their kids and all those kinds of things. And that's who we wrote it for. And unfortunately, there were meetings between the World Health Organization and Amazon, and then between Amazon and the White House. And I'm sorry to report, this is the Trump White House under which this happened. And after this happened, we documented those meetings, but it appears that we were one of the first to, this is not a pleasant distinction, one of the first to be slapped by the administrative state and the big tech companies.
That's what's so crazy, is because I know at that time you were somebody that would have been a proponent of vaccination, and like you said, even talking about masks in the book. And it's just like, for the censorship to have happened that early, it's like almost like as if it was a precedent that they needed to set on early, that they needed to be the ones in control of this narrative. Whether what you said was even salacious or not, it's just like it was just this overarching need to set this precedent that they would have to be the ones in control.
I think there's merit to what you're saying, Christy. Hopefully with these lawsuits that are in progress right now, that are revealing all kinds of documents about how broad the censorship was across multiple government institutions and very free with Twitter, etc., we're going to find out something about what actually happened.